fill her up, fill it up. These are the things that people, used to often say when they pulled their car up or their vehicle up in the filling station. That's what we used to call gas stations, filling stations. And then you wouldn't just go there just to get gas. They would look at all the liquids in your car, whether it was the oil or the radiator fluid, windshield wiper, or even the transmission. There are at least 2 states in this country, I want to say it's New Jersey and Oregon, where you can't pump your own gas for whatever reason. They have attendants, and you walk up there, and this is exactly what they say. How can I help you? And they'll say, fill her up, fill it up. And that usually means fill the tank with gas, and to which the attendant does so. But I will tell you, as a priest, believe it or not, this happens to us, and this is one of the things that I have stopped doing. People will pull up into the parking lot with whatever kind of car, or they'll come into the office and say, Father, on my way, it's usually they're on their way to see their mother in the hospital. That's usually a big one. And I just need some gas. Could you please fill up my tank? Now, in the first 10 years of my priesthood, no problem. I'll walk you over, fill up your tank, no problem. I don't do that anymore. I don't do that. My father once told me, if you can't afford the gas, you can't afford the car. And if you have someone who can't afford to put gas in their tank, they probably don't have a license, and they sure as heck don't have insurance. And all you are doing is enabling them. In other words, sometimes someone says, fill me up, and to which the proper answer is no, no. Because, yes means nothing if no is impossible. This is what happened to those 5 foolish virgins. They just presumed, hey, we run out of oil. Give us some of yours. Give us some of yours. I'd like to look at this image because I think it's a deep and theological one. Anytime the scriptures speak of oil, for them it's not motor oil, it is usually some kind of olive oil. It is a sign and an instrument of grace. Even here in this chapel, when we baptize children, we anoint them with oil. When we confirm people, we anoint them. It's a sign of royalty. It's a conduit of grace. It means something. When we ordain, and especially when we visit the sick and we anoint them, it is reminding them that their suffering is not for nothing, and it is a conduit of the Holy Spirit. It is meant to fill them with the Holy Spirit. So these 5 foolish virgins, or rather the 5 wise ones, the fathers of the church say that the Holy Spirit comes in 3 chords, 3 combined chords: prayer, faith, and sacrament. That's how we fill up our tanks with the Spirit. That's how we fill up our tanks with the Lord. But if we neglect those, like we hear here, and a lot of the readings as we get close to Christmas, you'll hear readings like this where people at the judgment will say things like, hey, what about us? What about us? And he'll say things like you heard here, I didn't know you. I didn't know you. Because their tanks were empty. Their tanks were empty, and they just presumed that the rest of the church would just understand. Like I said, yes means nothing if no is impossible. It's kind of like a spiritual maturity, because a spiritual maturity waits, is patient on the Lord. Spiritual immaturity is when you approach God like a genie. This is what I want. Give me these things. Let me win the lottery and let me get a promotion and fix these people in my life. And God doesn't do that right away, so we blame God. Deacon was telling me he likes the image of a vending machine where we put a few prayers in, hit our thing, and if it doesn't work, what do? We kick it and push on it. Say, hey, I didn't get what I wanted. Now, that's a spiritual immaturity, because God, there's neither a genie nor a vending machine. It's kind of like actual maturity when those of you who experience the hell of taking your kids on vacation. And as you're driving long hours, they say what over and over again? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And I can imagine the five foolish virgins saying, is he here yet? Is he here yet? No, grow up. Having said that, I would also say that God desires to fill us. He does. He wants to fill us with his power, his presence, his spirit, his very self. And actually, we believe that he does. He has already done so, not to make our life easier, but to approach the world, to be missionaries, to be his presence in the world, not to make the world around us easier. You know, we sang it here in the psalm. Remember what the psalmist says over and over again, my soul is thirsty. My soul is thirsty, crying out to God, fill me with your presence, power, your very self. And in Jesus, he answers that prayer. He absolutely answers that prayer. So remember what the Father said, the three chords that God uses, that he desires to fill us with prayer, faith, and sacrament. And I would even add one more. What are those prayer, faith, and sacrament meant for? Is it just meant so we can feel good and on fire for Jesus? That's always good. You know, many churches like this one have an amazing ministry called Acts. I think it's awesome. It's our evangelization, kind of arm. But I think it's beautiful, wonderful. But sometimes people become what I call Acts junkies. They just go on retreat after retreat after retreat. Next thing you know, they got these bracelets all the way halfway up their elbow. And have they shared the faith with one person? Have they shared their experience with anyone? Have they gone on mission? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so I take us all the way back to Genesis, and we can learn so much from Genesis. You know, if you've ever been in a theological library, I imagine you haven't, but if you do go, you find out that there's all kinds of books on Genesis, all kinds of books on Revelation. It's like a U, and then everything in between is kind of less. But anyway, in the book of Genesis, between creation, which we're all familiar with, God created the world in 6 days, and the creation of Adam and Eve. And then we know the story of the fall, of how they, the whole serpent, apple thing, that disaster. But there was something that happened between them. There was something that God said to them between those two stories. He gave them a command. He gave them a mission. He said to them, and I quote, fill the earth and subdue it. Fill the earth and subdue it. We're asking God to fill us, fill her up, but he has asked us to fill the earth. And have we done it? Did they? And what does it mean to subdue it? To be masters. Remember, the earth exists for us, not the other way around. And how things have been twisted. And I would say that especially our young people have been filled with lies. They have been filled with strange philosophies and theologies where they doubt their very existence. These past few weeks, I've been hearing the confessions of lots of young people. A lot of the universities have their awakening retreats, and we go help out, and we hear confessions from college-age students. By the same token, a lot of the churches around here are having their confirmation retreats, and I've been listening to their confessions, and I have no intention of violating the seal, but I will tell you that a lot of them struggle with doubt. They struggle with depression. We have a whole generation of kids that have had all their questions answered. All they got to do is Google it, and it's there. You would think that they would give praise and joy to the truth. I would say just the opposite has happened. They doubt themselves. They doubt who they are. They become addicted. It is hard, and they are just, they're depressed. They're depressed. And you find out they have strange ideas, wacky ideas. And where'd they get them from? that people are bad, that children are the problem, that marriage is whatever. I would say when they pull up to the gas station of TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat, they say to Satan, fill her up. And he does. Because now they're filled with all kinds of ideas. One time, it's not in a confessional, one time across the table from me, I was talking to a young adult, and he said to me, I'm not sure I exist. What do you do with that? So am I talking to someone now or not? It's kind of funny because he was sitting next to his girlfriend, and I said, did you hear that? He might not be sitting there. Where do you get this stuff from? Well, I think it is the evil one. From whatever he's reading, listening to, watching, whatever government classroom he's in, I think oftentimes it is Satan's filling station, and they have been filled up. They have been filled up. And someone told these foolish virgins, if you go there to the wedding of the bridegroom, you could just take from whoever brought more. And I think that's what they asked. Hey, we run out of oil. Fill us up. And the answer was, I don't think so. It's going to take a little bit more on your part. But little do we know that God has filled us, and he desires to do so. And in prayer, sacrament, and faith, what does he do? He says, I want to fill you with my presence, with my power, with my spirit. And at the Eucharist, what does he say to us? I fill you with my very self, with my very body. I give you all of me. I fill you with all of me. But to remember what he said to Adam and Eve, he said, go fill the earth and subdue it. So when you leave here today, encounter wherever you work, wherever you go to school, whatever neighborhood you're in, you are now the filling station attendant. And the world is asking you, begging you, please, fill us up. Fill her up.